In this tutorial, we're going to start with the templates we made last time in the previous tutorial, and we're going to put them to work for this week 6 assignment for the Web Publishing 1 class. I actually had this video pretty well underway when I ran into a validation problem that was really puzzling, and you missed a very entertaining 10 minutes or so while I was trying to solve it. And it ended up being a real simple path name issue. But you didn't need to see all of that frustrating searching for the problem stuff, although it happens all the time. So when that happens to you, don't feel bad. It happens to all of us. So let's get going. We're going to take this template that we created, and I already added in a title. Midterm Project, big list of links, and more. It would be good if I actually had a specific research topic, because I would put that in there and it would make it a much more useful title both for human beings and for the search engine. But for now, I haven't decided yet what I'm going to research. I'm going to make that up as we go along. Here's our containers that we're going to be working with. Just so that we have something to look at, I'm going to put in the header container, for the time being, this is not, again, a particularly interesting title, and I certainly would replace this with something more interesting and more search-friendly once I figure out what I'm going to do the research about. So I'm going to just call it a big list of links for now. Inside the wrapper, I haven't done any styling in my style sheet yet. So let me just do this. This is my template. I'm going to do a save as, and since every web page starts with a home page called index.html, I'm going to save that into a folder called Midterm Project. Already did that. Okay, yes, let's replace it. Style sheet, same deal. Right now I haven't done anything with it, although I have put in a comment, my name, the date, and what this is about. And I'm going to save this specifically as style sheet week 6. I'm going to put that in my Midterm Project folder. Actually, this was the problem when I did the demo in the first place that ended up badly. I had not put the style sheet inside the folder. That's why I wasn't getting any results from it. So let's put it in the folder where it belongs. So there's my style sheet called Style Sheet Week 6. Let's make sure that's what we're referring to on the link. Well, we're not. We've got our generic name, so I'm going to change that to Style Sheet Week 6, which matches what I've named my style sheet. And I'm going to save that. Okay, so we're good to go. If we look at this now in the browser, it's not going to be terribly interesting. But, come on. There we go. Wow, my computer is really slow today. I'm not sure why, but it's agonizingly slow. So there's my H1. Not much yet. So let's go to the style sheet and do a couple of things. Body styles. Always a good rule of thumb to put in what you'd consider sort of the minimal starting point. So I'd say background color of white. That's what it looks like it is a lot of times, but that's a settable preference that the user could make their background color lime green if they prefer, and they also could make their text bright red if they prefer. I think white background, black text is a much better starting point. So that's going to give me this sort of neutral starting point. I'm going to save that. It's not going to look any different when I reload that, so we're not going to look at it yet. But I would say every time you do a style sheet, start with this. Probably you're going to later go back and customize it because you may decide you don't want to use black and white, but I think this is a very good starting point, just in case. Basically, that the user has some kind of crazy thing about how they like to change their background color and their text color. I'm not going to do anything here except that in the paragraph, I know just my own preference is a little bit of line height, actually a noticeable amount of line height. So I'm just going to put that in there, 1.4. So 1.4 times whatever the size is, I think is a good starting point for line height. So I'm going to just throw that in there for now. I'm not going to deal with anything like this. I am going to go down to where my containers are, and I'm going to do something with the wrapper. So typically you want to give the wrapper a width because you want to have a width that you can control. And I can fix it in pixels, let's say 960 pixels. And well, let's take a look and see what we get. So right now, let me save that. I've got a wrapper with a width. Let's see what happens when I look at what I did here in the browser. Okay, well, it sure doesn't look like I've got a wrapper going there. And that's because there's no way of telling. So we could give it a border, or in this case, let's just give it a background color, and then we'll see where our wrapper is. Border works just as well, background color, just so we can see it. I'm going to try red, you know, you're not going to miss that. Save that, go back. Okay, so you can see there's the width of my wrapper. At the moment, the only thing inside the wrapper is that H1 tag, and you notice that it doesn't change size. I can change the size of the browser window, but that stays fixed at 960. Okay? Now, don't use this as a model for readability or anything else, just so I want to see where things are. Probably a little better way of doing this is we can give it a max width of, in this case, I think I want to make my max width 960, and I want to make my min width, so I don't want it to get any bigger than 960, but I will let it get smaller, and maybe I'll let it get as small as 800 px. Okay, so let's just see what happens when we make that change. Alright, so nothing's happening there because I left in this one, so I'm going to get rid of the width. Now let's just go with max width and min width. Save that, reload that, and now you can see it's getting wider, and now it's going to get narrower, narrower, narrower until it gets to 800, which is my min width, and then it stops getting any smaller. It gets wider and wider until I hit my 960 max width, and then it stops. Okay, so that's a sort of a compromise between a fixed width site and a flexible. So it's a little bit flexible. The other thing I like is typically to have the content centered, so no matter what the size of the browser window is, the content stays centered. And that, if you remember, is very easy to do on the wrapper. What we're going to do is we're going to use a margin, and we're going to set it to be 0 auto. 0 top and bottom, auto left and right. So that's going to center that, save it, go back and look at it, and you'll see the change. Now it stays centered. It's going to resize a little bit up to a point, and all right, we're good to go. So now we've got something underway for where we're going to put our content, and most of the content at this point is going to be, let's go back here, most of the content at this point, I'm not going to write the intro until the end of my research, and then I'll know exactly what I want to say. So for now, I'm going to leave this alone. I suggest you work that way as well. I'm actually not going to set up the nav until the end because I don't know. I'm going to have a whole bunch of information. I don't know yet how I'm going to organize it. So I'm going to set up the nav when I'm finished. But what I'm going to work on right now is links. And typically, we've used a UL, and you know how that works. So you have UL, and then let's open and close these, so we don't forget. And then within the UL you have LI, which are list items, and we have item 1. Not very interesting at this point, but you understand what we're going to get, so and so on. So let's just save that and look at it. No surprise, you're familiar with this. Notice now that we've got more content inside the wrapper has gotten bigger. So it's going to expand to enclose the content that we have. So this is a typical kind of list. This is an unordered list. An ordered list would simply have the numerals 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to use a definition list, which operates a little bit differently. So if we're going to use a definition list, so a DL, and let's close that DL, it doesn't have a single list item. It has a two-part setup. So it has a DT, a definition term. So I know I'm going to be looking up websites, so I'm going to say website 1. That's the term. And then it's got a definition itself. That's a DD. So definition list, definition, DD. My first website that I think is worth looking at. All right, boy, grammatically, sorry, English teachers of the world, not so good. But there we go. So we've got a DL, we open and close that. We've got our first term, we open and close the DT. We've got our first definition, we open and close that. So if we save it, we'll see how that starts to play out. So if you notice, this is the format that the definition list automatically uses. So it puts the term on a line, the definition itself on a separate line, and that line is indented somewhat. So I'm going to do a couple more actually using links to show you how we can play this out. But before I do that, I have to correct a few things. This is really ugly. So I'm going to do a real quick fix just so that it's not as annoyingly terrible. And I'm going to, on my header, I'm going to put some padding. 1M seems to be a good starting point. So let's just do that and see what that did for us. Okay, so now I've got 1M padding. Boy, that looks a little bit like overkill, but for now I'm going to leave that alone. The other thing I could do, and maybe I'll do that instead, it's leaving a little bit quicker and easier. I'm going to take that 1M of padding out of the header, and I'm going to put it in the wrapper instead. So when we save that, now we've got 1M of padding here, and I think that's, at least just for, you know, a starting point, that's a little bit better. And I'm going to go to Photoshop since that color is fairly gruesome, and I'm going to pick, let's just say I want to stay in the red area. I'm going to pick a light, I don't want it to be too pinkish. Let me warm it up a little bit by moving up toward the yellow a little. That's not a real, I'm sorry, it's really not liking that color. So let's go with green. How can you go wrong? Spring is coming, let's take that. That's sort of a springish green. So I'm going to copy that color. Go back to Text Wrangler, and then in my style sheet, that's the color I want to use for the wrapper. So that's the number, and don't forget the hash mark or the pound sign to designate that it's a color. Okay, now it's going to be a little less ugly. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, so we're ready to rock and roll here on our research. So now here's what I would do. While you're doing your research, I would keep this document open and work right inside of it to build your starting point of your midterm project. So let's just say I want to research sharks, because I actually have some good pictures of sharks. I know nothing about sharks, honestly. I don't care that much about them, but let's say I wanted to do that anyway. As you all noted in your research discussion, using Wikipedia as a source is considered to be pretty questionable, but one of the things that a couple of articles suggested is go down and actually look at the sources that are listed in Wikipedia and use those as sources, probably much better. So there's a ton of things we might do. So let's take a look at this one. Jaws, A Natural History of Sharks by the Natural History Museums. Okay, probably pretty good. So let's just say I want to use this. Here's the way to do the research that's going to make your job very simple, and it's also going to save a lot of possible errors. Go to the site that you want to link to. Actually copy the URL right out of the address bar, Command C to copy it, come back here, and paste that in here as your definition term. Okay? And let's just say shark biology, article from the Natural History Museum, article little description from Natural History Museum about shark biology. And what do I like about it? Well, what do I like about it? It's got a glossary, that's nice. It's got some illustrations. Okay, so let me just say I like it because informative with illustrations and glossary, because that may be helpful as I research more about this. And I don't know much about the whose Natural History Museum. Well, let me see if I can find out more about that. Okay, session 1, session 2. I don't know. How do we find out more about... Oh, these might be worth looking at as well. Usually when you click on a logo like this, you'd find out who that is, but there's no link, which is kind of frustrating. And Fathom. Okay, so, all right, this is sort of a defunct. It's from Columbia University. Natural History. Oh, here we go. All right, so finally what I did is I saw that logo again, clicked on it. Here we go, Natural History Museum of the UK. All right, so I'm going to go back, Natural History Museum of UK, and save that. And now if I look at what I have in terms of my own page, I have this. Okay, so this isn't a link though, unfortunately. I really would like that to be a link so that I could actually click on it. So, as you recall, I'm sure to make that into a link, we just do an ahref equals, and then we go there. So ahref equals, then we have to close that a link. Oops, forgot my slash there. But now if we look at it, something's wrong. Oh, where'd it go? Well, I made it into a link with the ahref, but there's no link text that's readable, so link text has to appear in there. I think, wow, in this case, often I would use the name of the website as the link text, but this doesn't seem to be that helpful. Fathom.com course. So, I don't know what to do about that. That's not ideal. So I'm going to say, well, let's just use this for the time being. Because it's a defunct website, it's not going to be all that helpful, but fathom.com. All right, so now that's going to be my link text. Now when we go back here, this is going to be more what you would expect to see. There's the link text. All right, so when I click on that, ta-da, it goes right there. So this is the process I would use as you go through your research. So go back, we're going to research sharks some more. Kids zone. These kids things are often really good, so that, you know, even though they're aimed at kids, they can be really fun. Shark facts, shark activities, shark pictures. So I'm going to put in another definition term, DT. And I'm going to paste that in for the time being. And I'm going to put in a DD, definition list. Site aimed at kids, but fun facts and other features may appeal to adults. You know, just me, but I often like these things. Okay, so that's the end of my definition term. Oops, DT, I'm sorry, definition, not the definition term. There's my definition term. So let's save that, go back here, and look at it in the browser, and you'll see we've now added a second link. But again, we have to, this is the actual URL, so we have to make that into something readable. And I'm going to do the same process, which is, I think it's actually often a good idea to use the name of the website as the link text, but you don't need all that HTTP stuff. You need that for the link itself, href equals. But for the human being, they don't really need to read http:// but they might want to know this, that it's from KidZone website. So I'm going to put that in there as my link text. All right, now the fact that this is brown is not a good sign. What I did is I lost my closing quote there. Okay, there. Now this is black, which is what it should be. Okay, so let's look at this again. Reload. All right, so this is the start of our big list of links. I would now that I know what I'm doing about sharks, add that to the title, big list of links about sharks. I could make it much better than that, but that's better than what we had to start with. I'm going to add that into the H1 because that's going to help our searchability as well. We have the word sharks in there and we have that in the title. So search engine is now happier because it can see something that we're working with here. And there you go. So you should be good to go now. Follow this process, do your research, and just amass your list of links. At the end of that, once you've learned everything that you can possibly learn about sharks or whatever it is that you're researching, look at all the links, figure out how you might want to organize them. That's going to become your navigation, and we'll deal with some of that in a future demo, how you could set up links within the page to jump to different parts within the page. And you're going to write a brief introduction. Again, once you've learned everything that you can learn, then you can write a good introduction that's going to make it appealing, and that's going to go in our intro section. So I hope at this point you're ready to roll and you can get started on your research for your midterm project.